Hello, this music e-learning is about Wolfgang Mozart. Mozart was a very amazing child. He could write music before he could even write words. He could listen to music just once and then write it down without making any mistakes. That would be like you reading a book and then writing it without making any mistakes. His middle name was really Theophilus, but he liked Amadeus instead, so they named him Amadeus in the middle, but instead of Wolfgang, they called him Wolfie. At the time, he was probably the most famous composer in Europe. By the time he was 20, he definitely was the most famous composer in all of Europe. Mozart wrote more music in his short lifetime than many composers who lived much longer. Beethoven really admired Mozart's work and wanted to meet him, but nobody really knows if they ever met. When he was just a boy, his father would take him traveling from town to town to play for the kings and queens of England at the time. And being that it was so primitive back then, primitive compared to what we have here, they had to travel in the rain and the snow and the mud, and Mozart would fall ill very frequently, so he was not a very well child for much of the time. When Mozart was 26, he married, and he and his wife had 6 children, but only 2 of them lived past infancy. Back then, they didn't have a lot of medical care or anything like that, so if a child was ill, many times they would not have made it. And even though Mozart was very, very famous, he did not manage his money very well. He spent much more than he made, and he died penniless when he was 35 years old. So I'd like to highlight some of the tools of the compositions that they used during this time. This was called the classical era of music. One of the tools that the composers used was called a sequence. And what it is a sentence or phrase of music that's repeated up or down. So this is an example of a sequence. Do you hear how it went from here to here to here to there? So it kept going down in this case. Here is another example of a sequence, except there's just a few more notes in it. So those are examples of sequences. A really good work to hear this is a sonata that Mozart wrote. He called this his easy sonata. It was for beginners to play. And here is a little 6-year-old playing this Mozart sonata, which really is not that easy to play. So that was a 6-year-old. He did a really, really fun job of that. This is the very last symphony that Mozart wrote. It's called the Jupiter Symphony because it was thought to be such a huge work, sort of like the planet Jupiter is a huge planet. Notice the differences between forte and piano, those loud places versus the quiet places, and the really strong lines that he has, sometimes followed by very gentle, flowing lines. We'll only listen to a little bit of this because it's almost a 40-minute symphony, so I'll have to cut it off at some point, but I will leave a link to these couple of pieces so that if you wish to listen to them more, you sure can. So here's the symphony in number 41 by Mozart. So I hope you enjoyed this really short overview of Mozart and you enjoyed some of the music that he wrote. Truly, the world probably will never see another Mozart because he was just one of the best. Thanks for watching.